everyone, welcome back to another video. So to start the video off, we went ahead and wrapped up the fuel surge tank. So I have the heat shield on, which this is DEI's, I believe it's their floor and trans tunnel black heat shield. And I really like the look of it, and I think it kind of classes this whole surge tank up a bit. And for the use that it will see, and the duty that it will see rather, it should be more than adequate for that. So now that the surge tank is finally completed, I can finally put it back in the car and fill it back up with fuel and start this thing up again. So let's go ahead and get to that, because I really want to hear this thing run again. The surge tank is all back reinstalled. All the lines are hooked up, everything is tight, everything's good to go, and I can now go ahead and fill the surge tank back up in preparation to fire the car back up. So I'm very happy with the way that all of this came out, and I feel much better actually having some bit of insulation and thermal protection against the header and all of the heat that will be consolidated around this side of the engine bay. Well, the car did perfect on that little test drive, I guess aside from the GPS speedometer being off. Now, if you guys caught in the in-car clips, the speedo said I was going 150, 170 miles an hour, something like that. And I can, while I don't know exactly what the speed I was going was, I can say with reasonable certainty that it was not that fast. So I'll have to do a little bit of reading as far as the calibration goes on it and get that squared away. But all in all, the drive went perfectly fine. Everything works just the way that I remember it working, and it's still just a joy to drive. Well, today we are going to work on, and I guess build, a coolant overflow for the Supra. So the way that this thing has been ever since I got it up and running, have the fill pot, and we have the overflow port that has just been open. And I haven't seen any evidence of coolant being shoved out, and that's a good thing that we haven't pressurized the cooling system, or pressurized it above this 31 to 33 pound rating for this cap. However, the car has not been in boost, and the sealing integrity of the head gasket has not really been tested at this point. So I'm going to build an overflow for it, just so that way if this thing does pressurize and coolant does make its way out, it at least has a path of egress and a little vessel that will contain it, as opposed to it just spraying everywhere, which won't be a big deal on the dyno, but in the midst of actually making a pass could be a catastrophic issue. So I did some math and had three options of tubing sizes to go with. So going from smallest to largest, left to right here, we have 2.5 inch tubing, 3 inch tubing, and 4 inch tubing. In doing a bit of math, factoring in this 4 inch half sphere that I have, the piece of 4 inch tubing will net us the largest, or the largest volume for each one of these overflows, and that's kind of what I want to go with. So This piece, it'll look kind of odd as the actual tube itself will be fairly short, but I think the volume that it will contain compared to the volume that the cooling system is on the Supra, it'll be the best match that way. So without further ado, I can go ahead, cut this piece down, and start assembling all of this. And I have a cap, I have some number 4IN hose, 4IN ORB weld bung fittings, so on and so forth, to make all of this work. Well, the body and the bulk of the little coolant overflow is completed now, so I figured this would be a good time to go over the different features on it. So, top, obviously the cap is pretty self-explanatory. These two 8th NPT ports right here are for a sight glass, essentially. I'll have two little push lock airline fittings that go into both of those, and then a piece of clear tubing that goes in between them. So that way I can see what the actual fluid level on the inside of this is. And then on the bottom side, we have a number 4 ORB little female bung that the corresponding fitting will obviously thread into, and that'll be the siphon portion, or where fluid actually goes in and comes out of this. So I'll have to figure out something for a vent, whether I want to drill the neck of this, drill the cap, something along those lines, or maybe I can just pull the O-ring out of the cap and that will provide enough of a vent. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the body of this and pretty happy with how it has come out. You can see our half sphere on the bottom, flat top, all the welds around it, not counting the bungs obviously, are all done in the positioner. So there is uniform, at least as I could make them. And this thing fits in the car something along these lines right here. So I'm kind of taxed for space at this point in time. And if you guys have ever built cars before, and you know what once looks like a massive blank canvas very quickly fills up with the different brush strokes. And this is no different. So trying to figure out where to put this so it wasn't near hot stuff and not creating a huge traffic jam as far as getting to other components, and still being easy to get in and out and pour fluid into. Takes a little bit of brain power, but nothing crazy, and I'm pretty happy with the way that this is coming out. One other quick thing, this is a little tech tip for you guys, making two different diameter caps like this one. So obviously we had the outside diameter that needs to match up to the tube, and the inside diameter that needs to account for the hole. So the easy way that I have figured out how to do this is with this setup here. So I have my hole saw in the hole saw arbor, and this is in such a position where if I thread the hole saw off, then I can still slide this in and out, but it's as close to the piece of metal as it can be, so I'm not extending the drill press out crazy far. Beyond that, there's a piece of wood underneath of the piece of aluminum here, and then I just simply use some of these big ratcheting clamps to hold everything in place. So the drill press itself, I had to kick the bed of it over a bit. just so I could clamp everything down and get actually onto the edges of the table right here. But that's a pretty simple, easy way to do it. And the biggest thing is just making sure that you don't move the piece that you're cutting as you are cutting it. So make sure it's clamped down firmly and make sure that everything stays concentric. Otherwise, you won't have your small hole inside of your big hole. If you pull the piece out in the midst of it, then you may not be lined up with your large hole that way. Just takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of common sense, but this is the easiest way that I've found to do it, and it works out great if you're ever building little tanks. I mean, I did the same thing on this tank, on the fill pot here, and all kinds of things like that. Super handy, keep it in mind, and it will make your guys' lives much easier should you ever need to build something like that. So now that we have the overflow essentially constructed, we need to mount it. And thankfully I have 1, 2, 3 threaded bosses right here, which I'll probably just use these two, at least to start. And then if it sits and wobbles around, then I'll probably take one off of the bottom of it and put a rib nut or something in, so that way we have 3 points of contact and it won't move around. But at least right now I'm going to try just these two and see how I like that, and I can address the third one if need be before this thing actually gets a coat of paint. A little bit of work, a little bit of elbow grease, and now we have a completed cooling system. So from the fill pot, we have a number 490 to a number 4 hose, obviously. It snakes around. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but down in there is where the fitting connects the fill pot to the overflow. And then we have on the side here 2 air fittings or airline fittings with a section of clear tubing that is a sight glass for this. And then on the inside, there's nothing in here just yet, as I still want to paint this before I fill it up with any fluid. But we have this sitting here. It's nice and sturdy, or sturdy enough for what it is, and we have real tight confines around the return to the dry sump tank, but all this worked out well, and I am very, very happy with this. So the only thing left to do now is to disassemble everything, paint the overflow, and then it can be installed for good. The second coat of Steelit has now been applied to the overflow, and it came out nice, and I cannot wait to see this thing when it's all dry and fully assembled. But I'm not going to do that today. It's late and I don't have time to sit and wait for this paint to dry, as it will take a little while to do so. So this upcoming weekend is going to be absolutely beautiful, and I can't wait to get this thing out. I'm sure there'll be other cars out cruising, and I cannot wait to be one of them. But I have to get this all put together and get everything installed first, and then I can reap the benefits of that this weekend. Hopefully get the speedometer squared away as well. As if you guys remember earlier in the video, it was way off as far as the speed that it was reading, and I have it in this program mode currently, which will need to be, or I need to figure out about I think it's a 2-mile stretch. I need to calculate that, so that way the car, the speedometer, knows however many pulses that it receives, provided that the GPS deal is putting out pulses, that number of pulses correlates to that known fixed value of 2 miles. And the speedometer knows that whenever I receive X number of pulses, I'm going Y speed, and so on and so forth. Just kind of a simple algebraic problem. But that'll be a job for this weekend or the next couple of days. And I'm going to stop rambling and get out of here for tonight. The Steelit on the Overflow is now dried. It's looking beautiful with its nice gray coating on it. And I also went ahead and I drilled the little vent hole you can see right next to my index finger there. The vent hole sits on the back side, or the least visible side of it, and it will provide a little path for pressure to exit so we don't end up blowing up the overflow if it actually pressurizes. So the next thing to do is actually install it and assemble everything on it, and I'm going to just put the ORB fitting on the bottom of it with the overflow out of the car. That way I can minimize the chance that I'll scratch things or cause any issues that way. If everything's mounted, then it gives me a little bit better control over tools and everything else. So hopefully I don't eat my words here, and I'm going to put a little bit of paint down on these two spots just to church them up a little bit, and then we can put the overflow in, put some water in it, and all will be well, and another job will be completed. Now fully installed, fully plumbed, and with water actually in it, the coolant overflow is completed. So there's the overall view of the engine bay now with the coolant overflow in place, and I could not be happier with the end result. We have our nice speed hold triangular gussets on both mounting tabs. I love the Steelit, obviously. I love the sight glass. There's no leaks, no anything crazy. It's just a simple job well done. So now that that is taken care of, coolant that is exiting the system now has a place to go, and it looks cool and it fits right here. It's right at home with everything else here. So this job is done, and I think that's probably going to be about the end of this episode. So I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to be. Hopefully not too short, hopefully not too long, hopefully kind of that Goldilocks ratio somewhere in the middle, but I'm not going to drone on forever and prolong the end of the video. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, for coming along on this journey with me, and hopefully I don't eat my words, but in the next couple of episodes, we'll finally have this thing on the dyno if everything goes according to plan. So I just have to get the nitrous bottle filled, I have to get a drum of fuel, and then Bob is going to stop out and we'll do a systems check and a kind of a once over on the car to make sure that everything is good to go for it to go on the dyno. And if everything checks out there, then it'll be on the rollers very soon. So I'm excited, a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, but it's all part of the experience of working on and building cars like these. So other quick note I wanted to make is, guys, don't skimp on your thermal protection, on your heat management. Now, I wrapped all these lines, put this shield on here, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't view it as absolutely necessary. But last thing that you want are fires to happen or melting lines, for not the safety issues, just the inconvenience and kind of the pain that it ends up being. So just do your due diligence, do your thermal management. I know it isn't the most fun or the sexiest thing, but it's necessary just the same way that the rest of everything else is. So with all that being said, I'm going to stop rambling now, and that'll be the end of this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.